Hello everyone. So I'm on my break. I just finished my second year, and I thought I'd make a video again for you guys. Um, Especially because over the past year, I've actually been involved with the ASTA UCLA Pre-Dental Outreach Committee program. It's a club basically to mentor pre-dent students, and I've been involved with that for a year in my second year, and I was the co-chair with my classmate Kevin, who is extremely good at his job. So I've talked to a lot of pre-dents. I've gotten a lot of questions, and I've basically become educated about all of your questions, right? What your concerns are. So I wrote out a quick list of some misconceptions I think a lot of pre-dents might have about applying in general, right? So I wanted to just go over that with you guys today. So this is Louis. He's my classmate. He's a good friend of mine. He helped me actually form this list. So we'll be just basically going back and forth, talking about all these misconceptions and explaining what the truth is. So the number one I have here is having more hands-on dental experiences makes you a better applicant. So the hands-on dental experience, I mean like extractions, like pulling out a tooth, like if this is not a standard of care in the US, then it shouldn't be applied to disadvantaged persons in, for example, like mission trips, because here it's unethical and it's illegal, right? So you should not do it even on mission trips either, because you should stay consistent. As a professional, you gotta have like moral ethics and conduct, abide by the rules, right? So even though you might think this might make you like a stronger applicant because you have more dental experience, like real dental experience, it actually makes you a worse applicant because the faculty are gonna think you don't follow the rules, right? So there's that. Even something as harmless as like putting rubber bands on braces, right? You might think that's harmless, but it's still illegal. So even if you've done that, don't mention it. Please don't mention the application.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll take the next point. So another misconception is that having lots and lots of hours, like 1,000 hours of shadowing, will make you a superior applicant to someone who has, say, 200 hours of shadowing, because bigger is better, right? Well, not exactly. Sometimes less is more, in a sense that you want to be a well-rounded applicant. So, shadowing and volunteering, that's really good. But up to a certain point, you reach the law of diminishing returns. Like at some point, it's not that worth it. You should focus your energy and time on doing something else to show the school that you're a mature and experienced person. So you can work, you can do other kinds of volunteering, you can do, say, research if you're up for it. We'll actually get into that a little bit later. But yeah, for most schools, if not pretty much every school, 100 hours, maybe 200 hours will put you in really good standing. Too much might make them question the validity of this. So do not lie. If numbers don't add up, it's me a problem. Actually, Don told me that one of our assistant deans came across an applicant who claimed on their application to have, thousands of hours of shadowing, hundreds of hours of volunteering, hundreds of hours doing leadership. It was just crazy. It's unlikely that in the amount of time that they, did this, that they had time to actually do school or sleep in the meantime,
Yeah, if you're able to do all that, you should be able to split your body in half and do two different things at the same time, but you're not. So just make sure your numbers are truthful. At the very least, like they have to make sense mathematically. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can take this.
Okay. Yeah. So next point is that doing strictly dentistry related anything. So you got your volunteering, you got your clubs, so your pre-dental clubs, or you got research in a dental school nearby, if you have one, would necessarily make you a better applicant, which is also untrue, because it makes it seem really generic and really disingenuous, because it sounds like you're just trying to please the administration of the dental school and not be your own person, because being your own person is really important. You want to really exemplify what makes you different from everyone else who's applying. Schools are trying to, recruit for different and diverse personalities, because, dental school is a very intimate environment. Like our school has 88 people per class. Everyone gets a pretty good idea of who each other are. So they want individuals who have unique and interesting life experiences. So if you imagine you had a class of 88 people and everyone in the school had the same exact experience. They all did, you know, president or VP of their pre-dental club, and they also did volunteering at the local homeless shelter. It doesn't really make for the most interesting or diverse atmosphere when you think about it. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so like those things, it's good to do them, but be sure to do things that you enjoy doing, and don't just try to aim for checking the box for everything, right? You can do dental-related volunteering, dental-related research if you want to. If you don't want to do any dental-related volunteering, it's okay as long as you do other kinds of volunteering. They want to see that you're an individual, right? They don't want to see that you're a cookie-cutter applicant, right? Okay, so also another point is GPA and DAT are the most important things in the application. That is yes and no, because yes, in the sense that GPA and DAT are the things that gets your foot in the door in the application process, because there's usually a filter. You have to get above a certain threshold. Usually the threshold is not too high, but you got to get above that for them to even read the rest of the application, right? So it's important in the sense that you have to first get there, right? Get them to read your application. And then after that, it's not as important, because after that, they already know that with this minimum GPA and DAT requirement that they have set and you've met it, so they know you can survive at least in dental school. And now after that, they want to see what kind of person you are and what have you done other than that, right? So it's a yes and no. But if I had to rank what's most important, like shadowing, like volunteering, DAT, and everything, right? If I had to rank them, DAT and GPA would be the top if I had to rank it, right? And also, a side point from this is some people ask me, is DAT more important than GPA? So in a sense, yes, because it is an objective measure, right? But in other sense, GPA also has an important role that DAT doesn't provide, in a sense that DAT is more of a snapshot, right? Like you could have a poor GPA, but have an awesome DAT. Like you could have a 3.0 GPA, but have a 25 DAT because you're someone who is generally usually not that hardworking, but you're also able to cram amazingly well. In the sense that you can sit down for a month and then just kill yourself and get an amazing score, but you have a problem with being consistent with 4 years of study, right? So I think GPA is more of like a trend representation of your long-term work ethics, and DAT is more of a snapshot of what you can do, right? So I think both of them are important, but worst comes to worst, if your GPA is low, then try to shoot for a high DAT. But if your GPA is really low, then I would say, of course, shoot for a high DAT, but also take like maybe post-bac courses or do a master's program to make up for that GPA. Because like, if there's a certain point where like the DAT can't overcompensate for your GPA, right? Yeah, and yeah, upward trends in GPA are usually looked favorably if you have a little bit of a low GPA. But that's only if your overall GPA is not like too low, right? It's also commonly said by many people I've seen on the internet that a low GPA doesn't mean you can't get into dental school. That's true. But the problem is it's much harder to get in dental school. You can still get in, it's just way harder. So try not to make your life harder by, working hard early on in college. And if you haven't, then work hard for the latter half of your college so your GPA shows an upward trend, right? And also work hard in getting a good DAT score, right? Yeah. Next point is Lewis. He's going to talk about research.
Yeah, so this is something that I actually get asked quite a bit because as an undergrad, I did do research. Granted, my research wasn't actually in dentistry. It was actually in neurobiology. So I got a couple of questions about that during the interview. So one analogy that I like to tell people is that research, it's kind of like frosting or icing for a cupcake. You want to have a moist, tasty cupcake. That's your application, you got to have a solid GPA, a solid DAT, solid personal statement. And the thing is that research is just not that crucial because unless the institution that you're trying to go to is super research heavy, research is not really considered, all that important or all that valuable to your application in terms of, how much more it adds to you, you know? On top of that, dentistry is a really humanistic profession. You know, you work on people. So, you know, being good at science and math is great, but, you know, people want to see that, you know, that you're a caring person, you know? It's not like astrophysics, and, you know, as much as I like to hope we are, we're not Neil deGrasse Tyson. So there's this one quote that we hear over and over in our education, which is that, you know, patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I want to pass the next one on to Don about some personal statements.
Yeah. Yeah, just adding to what he said though before. So our class, my class in UCLA, is like our school is pretty like we emphasize research a lot, but like our class is still overwhelming majority of our class haven't done any research prior to coming to dental school. So that tells you a lot, right? Research is an icing on the cake, like Louis said before. It's not by any means a requirement. If you only do it if you enjoy research, if you genuinely want to do research and enjoy it. Otherwise, it will just make your life stressful, and it will take time away from doing well in school, shadowing, and whatnot. If you're not genuinely interested in research, it's so much better to just go all in on doing well in school and maybe getting a leadership position and getting more shadowing and volunteering hours, okay? Our next point, another common misconception. Okay, this one's tough. So this one's about personal statement. So we're gonna talk a little about personal statement now. So the desire to help is all you need is not true. You also need to like dentistry, and you have to convey that, right? Because the reason, anyone can say that they love helping people, or that they felt amazing after helping a patient get a new smile, right? Anyone can say that. It's not hard. It's very easy to say that. How can you differentiate yourself from that, right? Since you're in a pool of personal statements that hype this up, you know? So one way to do that is you add your personal qualities into it and apply them to dentistry somehow, like compare and explain why you as a person are a good fit as a result of that to dentistry, right? We will expand on this later, but let me give an example of what not to do, right? I see this a lot in personal statements. Talking too much about like caring for the low income folks, like access and all that, right? Problems. You see that a lot. It's a common theme among a lot of personal statements. And the reason why I think this is difficult to do is because it can sound disingenuous. Let me explain. So let me give you first real life stats that's relevant. So 14% of dentists right now are, I think approximately 14%, I've found this, practice in rural areas. That means 86% are not, right? And low income folks are usually in rural areas, right? If you came from a disadvantaged background, you're more likely to go back to that area to practice than if you were from a better off neighborhood, right? If you didn't live in a poverty or low income neighborhood, it is hard for you to make the case that you fully understand what these people go through, right? So because of that, and also most dental schools are expensive, right? So this attracts a lot of students that are from, you know, decently well-off families, if not pretty well-off families, right? So I would say a majority of us don't quite understand what it means to be like that, what it means to be in that kind of family, right? So what you end up doing when you're on that boat and you try to communicate that your purpose in dentistry and why you got into dentistry is because you want to help the people in low income neighborhoods, what you're going to do is sound very generic because you don't know what you're talking about, right? And you're going to try to overcompensate and try to guess what you think the admissions want to hear. And because of this, it's gonna end up sounding not convincing enough. Like, it's just not gonna be specific enough. And admissions officers receive these kind of personal statements all the time. And they are probably tired of that, and they can see through it if you don't know what you're talking about. So unless you have a strong value system or conviction towards this cause, or slash like actual like experiences related to it, so you know it really well. I would advise that you stay away from this topic, just for the sake of authenticity, right? Authenticity is the most important thing in personal statement. Okay. Sorry, that was really long. So let's move on to the next point. Lewis, we'll talk about. Yeah, you can just go ahead.
We're going to talk a little bit more about personal statements in case you haven't had enough. So the personal statement, is it about why you're qualified to be a dentist? Well, kind of. Certainly, you do want to, talk about, why you're a good fit for dentistry, but you don't want to showcase too much. You have to actually answer why dentistry, because it's so easy for an interviewer to ask, well, why not medicine? So it's really easy to fall into this trap of showing off accomplishments, like saying, oh, I was granted an opportunity to assume the president position of this organization. We raised $1,000 or $10,000 for a great cause. The thing is that doesn't make you sound very humble. You really want to avoid discussing these sorts of accomplishments in your personal statement. You want to actually save that more for your CV or your resume. That's more of an appropriate place to put them. You also really want to avoid embellishing experiences to make them sound like you're, the hero of that story, unless you really were, because the thing is about personal statements is that there's a reason why they're called personal statements. They should be deeply personal. So when I wrote mine, I actually included, stuff about my family and their perceptions of, dentistry and oral health. So someone who knows you, like a family member, a close friend who reads it, should actually be able to say, oh yeah, this is that person. After they read it, they shouldn't need to see your name at the top of the page. Do I agree with that?
Completely agree. Yeah, basically, so in an essay, you have to, adding on to Lewis's point, in an essay, you have to not only answer why dentistry, but also why you're qualified to be a dentist. Not just one or the other, okay? It's both of them, right? And also avoid, you have to always try to be humble, okay? Always read it back to yourself and think, does this make me sound humble or not, right? Because I know it's very tempting to showcase our achievements because we want to let them know that we are good and qualified, but actually often detracts from us, right? Being a good applicant. So another point, I guess this is just overall, but coming from a minority background makes you a unique applicant. It used to be, but not anymore, right? I would say still somewhat yes, because dental schools do embrace diversity as an important value. So they try to diversify the ethnicities of the students. And there are also a lot of scholarships for minorities, right? But so in that sense, it can be an advantage, I would say. But in dental school, you also have to pull your own weight no matter what, regardless of which race you are or where you come from, right? Do remember that being in a minority group still means you have dozens, if not hundreds of other applicants in that same group trying for the same spots as you, right? My class, UCLA, my class is majority minority, okay? Majority, okay? So we're actually not really a minority, but we're like the majority now, okay? So try to avoid falling into the trap of making your application revolve around the fact that you come from a minority background, because that's no longer deemed unique anymore, right? Yeah, keep in mind that getting to school doesn't mean that work stops, right? Getting to dental school doesn't mean that your life is made. You have not made it yet. You've not even close, you haven't even started yet. I would say your life starts after dental school, right? It's what you do, because dental school, most dental students still haven't like really worked yet, and they've had their hands hold their whole life. So after dental school is when I think when we are finally free to make our own decisions and work and everything, right? So yeah, and something that's related to this point is having, just like being a minority doesn't guarantee you that you're a strong applicant, having traumatic experiences also doesn't guarantee that you're a strong applicant, right? I've had this one student that I read personal statement from. He came from like a really dangerous area from a different country, third world country. There are a lot of wars and going on, right? Just outside his house. And he said, and he talked a lot about that, right? Probably majority of his essay was about that. So he ended up actually not talking that much about himself and why he wants to be a dentist, right? And how those experiences shaped him, right? So I just want to emphasize that you don't want to rely on your traumatic experiences if you don't have any, right? If you do want to use them, make sure you don't overwhelm the essay with it, but also talk about how these experiences made you a better person, right? And what you learned from it, right? Just going through traumatic experiences does not make you a better applicant necessarily, okay? But it gives you an advantage, an opportunity to use this, right? And use this to make a stronger point, right? Yeah. And last point, almost done.
Cool. Thanks for sticking around, y'all. So pretty much the last point we want to make is that
So long.
It's not too bad. Submitting your application later with a better DAT is not always better because it depends on how much later, you know. If it's, you know, a week or two later than when the application cycle opens and it's a really big jump in your DAT score, then yeah, I could probably justify it. But usually that's not the case. I'd probably personally recommend that you take the DAT maybe 6 months ahead before the application cycle opens. So you have a good amount of buffer room in case you decide you want to retake it. Also, as it turns out, because of COVID-19, UCLA is making DAT optional, I believe, for this application cycle. Correct me if I'm wrong. But don't expect things to, you know, be less strict in other regards, like your GPA or personal statement. And I also would not advise that for future application cycles that the DAT will be optional.
Yeah, like someone asked me, is they're gonna reduce shadowing hour requirements, and I don't think they will because we've only had COVID for 3 months, and like, you know, if by the time you apply, you would have had at least 2 to 3 years of college experience. So during that time, you should have had enough time to gain at least 50 hours of shadowing. So I think those hours are not changing. I think it's the same. It's only the DAT because it's actually physically difficult for people to take DAT now because they're closing. But that doesn't mean they're gonna take out DAT completely entirely. If you took DAT, then it will take into consideration. If you haven't taken it, you can still apply to. And also, like adding on to Lewis's point about submitting earlier, the reason why I think submitting earlier is more important than like getting a few higher points on the DAT and submitting later is that everything's rolling, right? Everything's rolling, and even if you get like 26 on the DAT, if you submit in, for example, like October or November, like you might not, like even if you're an amazing applicant, if the spot's already filled up by then, you have no chance, right? So timing is really, really important, right? Timing. But it depends on how late, like you said. I would say maybe if it's August, then it's okay, I think. But September is like pushing it, and I would probably avoid like anything later than September. Yeah. But yeah. Okay, so that's it. It's been over 20 minutes. So I'm gonna end this video. Yeah, we're using Zoom, so you can see like my clones. I did that to scare my professors away. But anyway, yeah, thanks for sticking around. I hope this was helpful. And if you guys have any other questions, always feel free to ask me. You can reach out to Lewis. What's your Instagram? People can reach out to you.
LEWIS_LOUPES, Lewis Loops.
Yeah, Lewis_Loops. So you can ask me questions there. You can ask me questions probably through my email or my Instagram. My Instagram handle is dentistry. Really convenient, right? Okay. Convenient. So yeah, that's it. And I know this is a difficult time right now for everyone because of the application process, but please stay positive. Everyone's going through the same issues right now. Dental schools very aware of the stress all of you guys are going through, especially if you've taken DAT. So please stay positive and take advantage of mentors like us or other dental students. And now my club, the pre-dental club, has a YouTube channel that's a very good resource. So go look up UCLA space pre-dental outreach. Pre-dental outreach is one word. So UCLA space pre-dental outreach, and you should be able to find a YouTube channel and use some useful videos there. Okay, best of luck, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.